This is where our journey with God begins in India. I'm standing here at the Bay of Bengal. It's along the eastern coast of India. 2004, it was Christmas in the United States, the day after Christmas here in India, when that horrible tsunami hit this entire region and many of the beaches along the Indian Ocean, all around this whole area of Asia. 250,000 people died in that worst recorded natural disaster. And many people were asking, how can God allow this to happen? Many people were asking, how can God bring anything good out of this? And yet God, He told us that if we'll put our faith and our trust in Him, that He can take even the worst tragedy and turn it into a triumph. That He can do more than we could ever ask or imagine if we'll put our faith in Him. And God has been faithful, and the journey began right here. So from the Bay of Bengal, now on top of a orphanage and church building in Angol, India. Why Angol, India? Angol is about 50 kilometers from the Bay of Bengal. After the tragedy of the tsunami, the Chintapalli family began receiving children who'd been displaced by the tsunami. Over 50 children were here, and meanwhile, back in the States, the church was trying to find ways to help. The Grace Chapel Church heard about the Chintapalli family and their need, and so they gave the money, and the Chintapalli family said, we actually need an orphanage to take care of these children. And so the first phase of the orphanage was built. We're in a city of about 500,000 people, and in this city, these children began to come and see the good work that was being done here, and more children were needed. And so eventually we built on to the facility, removed the old small church building that the Chintapalli family had built, and erected this beautiful facility. And with almost $400,000, this has now become the place of influence for this whole area. As the Chintapalli family began caring for the children, there were so many other needs that eventually came along. And God was leading us on a journey that would be a journey of triumph, really, in the midst of the tragedy that had taken place just 50 kilometers from here. And so we've been a part of that journey. And the Chintapalli family have been blessed to take us along in that journey. Venkatarao and Lakshmi, they were converted to Christ back in the 1980s. They were strong Hindus. Matter of fact, Lakshmi is the name of a Hindu god, and they had a son whose name is Rama, which is also the name of a Hindu god. And Rama married Udaya, and then they have another son, Kalyan, who married Raga. And they had a purpose that Rama would preach the gospel, and he studied and began preaching the gospel with his father, and then Kalyan would get a degree and eventually go to America and raise awareness and support for the work in India. And so it was Kalyan who came to the Grace Chapel Church and pleaded with us to be a part of this work. And we're so thankful that in God's wisdom, He brought us together for this great work at this time to do His work and His commission. I remember one time we were in the Wings Children's Home, and I heard something out in the street. It was kind of a noise, but it kind of sounded like a band of some sort. And I asked Ram, I said, what's going on? And he said, oh, those are people with leprosy. And I said, leprosy? We still have leprosy in our world with all the medical care? And he said, yeah,
these people beg every day, and that's what they do. They just go through the streets, and people give a little money, and that's how they're provided for. And so I remember going out in the streets and giving a little bit and thinking, man, I can't believe these people have to live this way. And so I went home and I shared this story, and in the process shared what Jesus said in Matthew 25, a picture of a king who is separating the faithful from the unfaithful. And the faithful are described as those who, he said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you cared for me. And he goes on to describe a people who love like he loves. And he says, when you do it to the least of these, you do it to me. And there was a group at Grace Chapel who said, we want to sponsor those people. What would it take? And for about $30 a month, we can provide for the basic necessities of a person with leprosy. And now people are going to our website, and over 200 people with leprosy are being provided for every month. And God is taking this tragedy and really turning it into a triumph, as these people now know there are people who maybe they'll never meet in this life who really love them like Jesus.
So the Chintapali family, they are certainly passionate about caring for people, providing needs, helping those who are suffering, taking care of widows and orphans. That certainly is pure religion, and they're all about that. But the end goal for them has always been what they call fishing for men. And Venkata Rao, the first evangelist, would go preaching all around this area and felt frustrated that there weren't more preachers. And so as we came here, it wasn't long at all before they said, we need a preacher school, not just an orphanage, not just caring for people who are suffering. We need to give them the healing that comes only from Christ. And so they began the Wings Bible School, a 2-year program where men come from all over this area, some from 5-6 hour train rides away to be here for 4 intensive days of study every month. Then they go back to their villages, back to their homes, and they teach what they've been taught. And after 2 years of that intensive study, they get their diplomas, and it's a great celebration, the graduations that we've enjoyed every year. The 8th graduation will be this year, and over 200 men have now been equipped and trained to go preach and teach the gospel. It's such a blessing when we meet with those men to be able to enjoy the fellowship that we now have as brothers in Christ, and the warm welcome that we always receive. And we've gotten to know them now by name and know them as men with families who are in villages who are struggling. And now over 47 men are being provided the basic necessities to be able to do full-time ministry in their villages. God has brought us on an amazing journey from that tragedy to now the great triumph of the gospel, as many are coming to Christ. Now well over 2,000 have come to Jesus. And as we come and we share, they have been planting, they've been watering, they've been preparing the souls to hear the gospel. And we're the harvesters. We're many times the one who get to enjoy the harvest being brought in as they hear the gospel and are convinced that they need to give their life to Jesus. And so God has done an amazing thing as He's brought us together with these wonderful people who are being equipped to preach and teach the gospel all over India. So this is where we are after 10 years with God and His journey with His people, in a journey of triumph over a disaster that happened just a few miles from here at the Bay of Bengal, where his story began with us, His people. Last year, several teams and 4 college students turned this church building into a child care center. We call it Grace Place. It's a place where 25 children have the opportunity to begin an education that most of them would never, ever be able to have. Every day they're fed 2 meals. 2 meals more than probably many of them would get many times in their own homes. And here, as they begin their education, more than just an education, they have the opportunity to learn about God and about His Son Jesus and about the hope that they can have in Him. That's why we call it Grace Place, a place where that grace can be understood and known. And so God's journey with us over the last 10 years, a journey that we believe is His journey that we're just enjoying, a journey of triumph for His people here in India after a tragedy that many would wonder, how can God bring anything good out of this horrible tragedy? And so here's where we are. We're not sure where God's going to lead us, but with the help of wonderful people in America and the Chintapalli family here and many other preachers and servants of the Lord here in India, God's work will go on, and it will go on in a triumphant, wonderful, godly way.
My soul